We are back, baby. We haven't seen you guys since the Super Bowl. So, unfortunately, Joey, we're going to have to go over that dark day, but we are back. It's the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is gone. Jimmy G's gone, and he's on the Rams now. So, the pod's days as YLT FGB are numbered. The name may have to change. We'll see, but we're pushing forward with it at least until the next NFL season starts. Great pod coming up for you. It's going to be a long one. We have a special guest coming up, our third guest in podcast history. We're excited about that. But obviously, Joey, we have to start off the top with everybody was texting me, hey, why was there no podcast after the Super Bowl? And I said, if the Vikings lost the Super Bowl in the fashion that the Niners did, I wouldn't have wanted to record it either. So we got to go over that dark day. So sorry.
Yeah. Been a while.
You've had 6 weeks to process. So, like, how are you feeling?
Like anything, got my good days and bad days. Yeah, I mean, some days it's just like you really feel like, I would never say good, but I'd say like you feel content with how it, like I don't think there's too much like I'm harping on about the game. I thought, could we have gotten a couple plays here and there? Sure. I would have liked a couple more, I'd say better pass protection on a couple plays, especially on some crucial third downs, end of regulation and into overtime. But I thought for the most part we played well, and unfortunately right now the two Super Bowls in the last 4 or 5 years it's been, we're playing like the Michael Jordan of this era, and there's really no shame in that. But yeah, it's brutal. I'm not gonna lie, it's brutal because it's weird. Like, since there's no game, even if you win, you don't really feel like that, like what could have been type thing, like really what could have been, because like we got to the the Super Bowl, but still, like what could have been if they had just like, I mean, what I forget is like they had another 10-point lead in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and again, I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, like it's like. Because like the Chiefs are the best team in the league. They won the Super Bowl. Like they're the best team in the league. But like again, there's no way you can tell me they're a better team than the 49ers. But we lost the game and they beat us again.
Well, and take Mahomes out of it as best you can. There were two opportunities in that game where if the defense makes a stop, you're Super Bowl champions, and couldn't come through in either of them. I think that's part of the reason Steve Wilks is out of a job. But looking back at the game, I know this was the sentiment you felt when I texted you at the time, where it was like, you're giving Mahomes the ball, the game is over. But I looked at it the other way, since I was a neutral fan for the game, and I was like, you are one defensive stop away from being Super Bowl champions. Like, when you look back at that game, is it like you said, like, well, we went up against Michael Jordan, and that's what happened to everybody for a decade in the NBA, and now it's happening to everyone in the NFL? Or is it like, God, if Steve Wilks would have just drawn up one play, or somebody would have made one play, or if Greenlaw didn't tear his freaking Achilles running out onto the field, like, do you look back at it like that? Or is that just like so far in the rearview mirror that you're like, look, we played a great team, that's what happens?
No, I mean, of course there's a couple. I mean, I remember watching the game and it hitting me in overtime when it was that 4th and 1 play. I was just like, for a second, I was like, if we stop this play, like we're the freaking Super Bowl champs. And it was like, because we never had that like in the last Super Bowl, even though we were up 20-10, it was never like real, like towards the end, like once the closer it got to the end of the game, it was like, well, I mean, are we going to come back? And the Chiefs ended up winning like,
they won by 11,
31-20, I think. Yeah. So it really wasn't, but this one was like, we were up 3, what was it? It must have been 22-19 in overtime, and like 4th and 1. I'm like, okay, I know it's like 4th and 1, and like likelihood we stop this is not great.
Yeah.
But like if we do, you never know. False start, off, like something, like penalty,
tipped ball at the line, anything. You were like,
anything. You're like, holy shit, like this is it. And then of course they run, the zone read, and like that was the play that it might have been the play that got Steve Wilks fired, because Bosa after the game was like, we didn't even practice that. We had no clue. Which again, I'll say like, okay, well, don't you study tape too? Like players, like, I mean, does Steve Wilkes have to tell you everything that's going on?
Right.
But yeah, I thought, to be honest, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but like, even if they won the game, I still think Steve Wilkes might have gotten fired.
Mhm.
Like, I just think Kyle was they were so not on the same page all the way back to that Vikings game where
Right.
the end of the half, and then Kyle post game was like, yeah, I'll talk to him. Like, we ain't running cover 0. And then
Yeah.
it just never was the same. And then that makes me feel even more so once they hired Nick Sorensen, that promoted from with like, Kyle wants a guy who's been in the room with these guys for a while. And Steve Wilkes was the first guy they hired that wasn't a part of his
Right.
group. So it makes me think he tried to go somewhere different, and it worked, I guess, to a point, because I did think the defense played more than enough to win. In fact, the defensive line played their best game in maybe like a couple of months.
Yeah.
But the only 2 plays I would say is I wish they got more pass protection on that 3rd and 4 in overtime when Chris Jones just goes unblocked. The one that started the Twitter firestorm between Feliciano and Burford.
Yeah.
Like, because Ayuk, the corner fell. Ayuk is wide. Like, there's no one covering him in the end zone. And then Jennings, if he's the one who got the ball thrown to him, like, he was open, but it just wasn't enough time. Like that, like, I don't want to sound
Purdy
like
had an extra 3/4 of a second, you win the Super Bowl.
Like,
it's brutal.
Exactly. Like, you know what so, like, I know Kyle takes a lot of crap for the overtime thing. And, like, if he would have come out and said, like, I'm going for 8 points,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have been like, I get it. Because, like, we were not stopping them.
Mm-hmm.
And,
first of all, them asking for the ball to start overtime, did you like that or dislike that?
it's so hard to say. Like, I get the reason why you want it the 3rd time.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the only way you get it for the 3rd possession is if you get 8 points.
And then they get 8. Or if you somehow hold them after they hold you.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're more likely to get 8 points and then get the ball, or just give them the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what he said. The defense was tired. The defense just gave up a drive. If the Chiefs had one more play, it would have been over in regulation.
Right.
On that final drive. So I know he said they were tired, but yeah. And then when they kicked it was a 52-yarder with 1:50 left,
right,
which was no gimme by any stretch of the imagination.
Not only was it not a gimme, I think you and me and every single person watching that game expected it to be missed.
Not just missed, but even if it was made, like, are we gonna stop them? Like,
yeah.
It's like at absolute best, I was like, this is going to overtime.
Yeah.
But again, if they get it, I mean, I don't want to like woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I think they win the game.
Yeah.
Because they would have been in range.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we'll see with the timeouts and stuff, but yeah, I mean, I thought, it just sucks. Because it's like, again, it's like, if this team didn't, like, what team's gonna do it?
Right.
Like, that was the best team I've 49er team I've seen, and they were healthy. I mean, for the most part, they were healthy. Other than
Greenlaw in the Super Bowl. Other than that, they had most everything they needed at their disposal in that game. It's just Mahomes' era, and that that really killed any chance. I mean, this was the worst Chiefs regular season probably since 2012, like pre-Andy Reid, but it didn't matter. I mean, they're getting into that, type of mode like the LeBron Lakers, like, some of those Cavs teams he was on, where it's like the regular season may not even matter to this point. As long as you win your division, really doesn't matter whether you're the 4 seed or the 1 seed when you have that kind of guy. And brutal game. Felt terrible for you and for my uncle and all the Niners fans in my life, because that was as close as you can possibly get to winning a Super Bowl without getting there.
You know what is crazy? I was going to talk about this here on the podcast, but like, you picture, I feel like it's different, like a game 7 overtime, like either like whether it's hockey or like, baseball and extra innings or something, because it's been 7 games.
Mm-hmm.
But like sometimes I forget, like I was a Super Bowl, like overtime of the Super Bowl, and it didn't feel like that.
That was only the second one ever.
Like
And
it felt just like obviously a big tough game, but it didn't feel like, oh my God, like overtime of the Super Bowl. Like
right.
as a fan of the team, like you just
You're like, oh, we just got to win the game. But like everybody else is like, hey, this is one of the 5 or 6 best Super Bowls of all time, just by the virtue of it getting into overtime. And we have had some good ones recently, but this one, I would say through the first 3 quarters was not a very good Super Bowl. And then the final, 30 minutes of fourth quarter and overtime gameplay was.
But how about Juwan frickin' Jennings? He made himself some money in that game.
There's a reason he was not number 3, not number 6, not number 100. He was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school in the entire nation, ahead of Joe Burrow, ahead of a lot of these guys. And he showed up.
Like if they would have won the game, he would have been the MVP.
Absolutely. And he's been tendered with a second round restricted free agent offer.
Which I've been thinking about. Like I know maybe we'll talk about it, but it came out recently the Jaguars maybe want Ayuk. I'm like, okay, we'll take pick 17. And
you're like,
I mean, I'm a believer in Jennings because Deebo Samuel has no trade value whatsoever.
Yeah, with his
$29 million cap hit, and no chance. But anyways,
got to put that game in the rearview mirror. It's the 2024 season now. The NFL is a year-round sport, and even though we're 5.5 months away from playing, games that count, we have fully moved on to 2024. Let's start with our free agency recap. I'll go first. Obviously, for the Vikings, the number one story is Kirk Cousins is gone, 4-year deal, Atlanta. Looked like this was going to happen very early on in the process. There were some reports that he and his wife had bought a house in Atlanta and that it was already headed towards that inevitable conclusion. And then it's come out recently that Atlanta is being investigated for tampering in the signing of not only Cousins, but also a couple other players. And it's like a possibility that the Falcons would forfeit their draft pick in the first round as punishment for that, which would move us up a spot. So there could be that silver lining, but adios, Kirko. That's the headline there. We're moving on. We signed Sam Darnold. I think he is only there to maybe start the first few games, maybe not even start at all if we trade up and draft a guy in the top 3 picks. I think he's, one of the best backups in the league, as you had him last year with the Niners backing up Purdy. He's a guy who I think it's a perfect fit, kind of like Mayfield was last year. Obviously, he overperformed massively for Tampa, but risk-free signing, 1 year, $10 million. If he plays great, you can have the rookie sit, the whole season. If he plays like shit, you put in the rookie, and the fans will be excited to watch the rookie. So, the cool thing about this whole situation with the Vikings is, and I know we've been texting each other about it, is the Vikings actually crushed it in free agency, especially on defense. I was not expecting to see this kind of activity in free agency after Cousins left. When that happened, I thought it was going to be one of those reset seasons where it's like, don't spend anything. We're going to have so much cap room next year to surround a rookie quarterback with. But no, we signed, obviously the Darnold contract, but then you have Aaron Jones is now a Viking, former hated Packer, is now leading our backfield. Greenard from Houston, Grenard, he was lights out last year. 10 sacks. I think he was like 3rd in the league in pressures, and we got him on a good contract. Van Ginkel, high motor guy. Let's just say it. Got to be high motor with long blonde hair and only getting like 3 or 4 sacks a year, but good locker room guy. That's what they say. And then Blake Cashman is going to kind of anchor the middle of the defense. So Flores is looking at, first he took the Zimmer defense, or it was Zimmer and then Donatel defense from 27th, 28th before he got there to 16th last year. I think we can get to top 8 this year. I really think we do with these signings. When you looked at the moves that the Vikings made, obviously it points towards drafting a quarterback, but you got to tip the cap to Kwesi and the front office for not giving up on next season by making all these signings. Yeah.
Just like they shouldn't have given up when Kirk went down last season. They shouldn't give up next year. And I think Sam Darnold will be fine. I think his timeline with where he is with his contract and his career makes it a simple quarterback room if they do draft a guy in the first round. Because it fits. Like, yeah, like you said, if he does well, great. Let the guy sit. If he doesn't, like there's no real ties to him, he'll just go into the bench. But yeah, I think he's better signing. I think he's a better player right now than most of the people. I mean, maybe like Gardner Minshew's probably had more recent success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he went to the Raiders, but like I would have taken him if I was in Minnesota over, Russ, over Justin Fields, who both went to Pittsburgh. I would have taken him over. Trying to think who else.
There was some clamoring for Jameis from Vikings fans, and I don't know, just so many turnovers. I didn't think that was going to be a good fit.
Yeah. But yeah, I Sam Howell, like I would have taken.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold,
Drew Lock, and
all these guys. So I think it's going to work. Whether he plays well, I don't know. I mean, I think he will, but if he doesn't, he at least is. It makes it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, it's a zero risk signing, right? Like, basically, all he has to do is either keep the seat warm, or if we're like 5-3 through the first 8 games of the season, ride out the season with him and see what you can do with an elite defense, completely retooled running back room. So Alexander Madison is gone. He had a tough year last year. It's basically going to be all Aaron Jones with a little bit of the last year's rookie Ty Chandler, who showed some flashes at the end of the season. So Kwesi came out and said the Vikings will not be trading Justin Jefferson, so I don't expect that to happen. There were some rumors of him being packaged in some kind of a deal for a top 2 pick, and I thought that was outlandish anyway, but looks like Jefferson's going to stay. Osborne just signed away today, so we'll probably get a new wide receiver 3. But for the most part, I was happy with our moves in free agency. I think it was a good time, as good a time as any, to move on from Cousins, given he's coming off the Achilles injury. He's 36 years old. It would have taken $45 million a year to keep him. I know the cap's going up, but that's a lot of money for a guy who's won 1 playoff game in his life. So, like, the Netflix documentary really helped boost his Q score, and people like him now, but he still is Kirk Cousins. He had some good seasons with us. He, I think, finishes his Vikings career as our 3rd all-time passer somehow, just because only Tarkenton and Culpepper ended up staying for like a long stretch of time. So adios, Kirk. Thanks for 7 good seasons, sometimes great. We named the pod after you, and that's good enough. Let's head over to the Niners. Muted moves was my headline. Obviously, when you went to the Super Bowl last year, and there's not going to be a ton of transition, there's not a ton of moves that you can make. But you guys favor sustainability, and you made some low-cost defensive signings that should make an impact. You tried to sign my boy Eric Kendricks, one of the great Viking linebackers of all time. He reneged on the deal to sign with Mike Zimmer, former Vikings coach down there in Dallas. But other than that, it's been pretty successful with you guys signing Floyd, Gross-Matos, and Elliott. Armstead out. But basically, you've just kind of retooled the defense with a little bit younger look.
Yeah, I actually really like it for the most part. I was kind of shocked that they actually were not able to, but went to Armstead and asked for him to take a pay cut, just because they don't really do that a whole lot with the guys they give these big deals to. But he was the longest tenured 49er. And he actually has been, I was never the biggest Armstead guy. I always wish they would have kept Buckner instead. But I thought he played the best couple of years of his career, like I think 2 out of the last 3 years. I don't think in 2022 he was as good, but 2021 and 2023, he was pretty good. He was by far our best run defender.
Mm-hmm.
But just making $17 million with his plantar fasciitis acts up every November, December into January. It's just like we needed guys that were healthy, and with the guys that we signed, not only were they more cost efficient, they're durable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Leonard Floyd has missed a game in a long time. Same with the Jordan Elliott signing. Same with Malik Collins, guy they got from the Texans. These guys don't miss games, and they're cheaper. And I still wouldn't be surprised if they go defensive line early in the draft.
Right.
Because as much as we've invested in this line with Bosa, Hargrave, the draft pick with Drake Jackson, the trade for Chase Young, it was for their standard pretty garbage last year. And towards the end of the season, it was very evident they could not stop the run. And they invested in it. I mean, it sure seems like with the signings they did, they took offense to it with how bad it was.
Yeah.
And I can't pronounce his name, but we signed a corner from the Saints who's actually got some pretty good number. I forget his name, but he's got some pretty good whatever they call fancy stats in the NFL. Like, any interceptions? I don't know. Does he? But like, you know,
Coverage
baseball
grade.
money.
Yeah.
He's got the money ball. Like, it's like
Yeah.
on those charts they got. You see,
Yeah.
like, he's up here in this quadrant up here. I'm like, okay, I don't know what the hell that means, but.
So given the moves that you've made so far, do you expect them to, say with their first and second round picks, probably look maybe run stuffing defensive tackle and maybe a wide receiver? Or what are you thinking are the top two needs there for those picks?
It depends what they do with Ayuk. I would not be surprised if he gets moved for a first rounder. I mentioned, well, at least I saw the rumor that he was like the Jaguars were interested. And they picked 17, which, he's going to be tough to replace. But if he goes for pick 17, I'll drive him there myself in a limo. I still think the number one need is offensive line. I think they're pretty weak center to the right side. So if they were to trade Ayuk for a 1, I would go offensive tackle or whatever the best offensive lineman you could get. And then I would take another defensive lineman with pick 31. And then I would take, there's so many receivers now that come out that are good in the like first and second round. I would take a receiver with whatever would be picked like 63 in the second round. I would take a receiver. And again, most of that is because, like, what do we pay Deebo Samuel for? Like, I mean, he could, step up. I mean, I'm a huge believer in Juwan Jennings, and, with Kittle and McCaffrey, like, I mean, come on, points shouldn't be a problem. Like, I'm not trying to say Ayuk was a bum, but like, I think these other guys, we could even be a better offense, more sustainable with a second round receiver and a much better offensive line. I mean, I think that's what's so understated about how good Purdy's year was. Is our offensive line outside of Trent Williams is not very good.
Yeah, right side of the line was
so
low rated.
Exactly. So like, that's where you make up for it. And I mean, it just I mean, again, it just at the end of the day, it does not make sense to have damn near $60 million tied up in 2 receivers.
Right.
Because Ayuk's going to cost, 25.
Yeah.
I mean.
And Debo's still got, at least 2 years left on his deal at somewhere around 29 million.
Well, he was paid after 21, 22, 23. Yeah, he's got only 1 year left, but it's a $29 million cap.
Yeah. So he can't be moved.
He can't do anything. I mean, people say, oh, trade him. I'm like, the dead cap. I mean, it does not make sense.
Trade him for a 7th. Yeah.
It'd be a 6 or 7, and like, you wouldn't even save that much money.
Yeah.
So. Exactly.
So you're thinking, I mean, if they do,
but if they don't trade him and they somehow extend him, and I would go offensive line. I mean, I'm reading a lot of mock drafts. They got the Duke, like, interior, like, whatever guard center, like Graham Barton, I think his name is, getting mocked to the Niners, but
that makes a lot of sense.
The trenches. I mean, everything else, like, honestly, everything else, like linebackers. Oh, the other guy I forgot. I mean, and Eric Hendricks bailed, which I was actually pretty excited about him. Just reading his like run defense numbers. Like, he's not the athlete he used to be, but his run defense last couple of years has been really, really good.
He's always been like a sure tackler, but the pass coverage has dropped off.
Yeah, and again, it's just weird. Like, so we signed Devondre Campbell, the Packers. He was all pro a couple of years ago. But again, if he was so good, why is he available type thing? Like, I remember when the Colts cut, Shaq Leonard. Yeah. And like, everyone like, oh my God, like the Eagle fans, like, we got Shaq Leonard. I'm like, I don't think he would have been cut if like the Colts, like, if he was a good player.
Yeah.
And just like what happens in football, he just body injuries, whatever, he just can't move. And so we'll see with this guy, but I mean, sadly, as much as we invested in it, our offense and defensive line were, I thought, our biggest problem.
So you're thinking they focus on the trenches. I'm thinking, obviously, the first pick that we take is going to be quarterback. You saw we traded up from the second round into the first round for the 23rd pick from Houston. So now we're picking at 11 and 23. And the question is, do they wait till 11 or maybe 10 or 9 and take a quarterback there, and then use the 23rd pick on something that we need. I mean, corner would be ideal for me. We really haven't had a first round quality corner in a long time. We've had washed Patrick Peterson, and before that we had Xavier Rose, but he just could never stay on the field. And I would love to see a lockdown corner, but if they do package 11 and 23 to move up somewhere 3-2, they say Washington is pretty much dead set on staying at 2, but the Patriots may be willing to move down and acquire as much draft capital as they can given how far away they are. I would like to see us just swing for the fences with a quarterback. I don't really want JJ McCarthy. I think it's just too conservative. I would love to see Daniels or May fall to us. That would be awesome. If not, I lean Penix just because I've seen the guy make all the throws in the college games. It's like,
it's crazy because I remember watching him. I was like, this guy, I would take him like 1 or 2. And then the mocks came out and they're like, he's a second round grade. I'm like, what am I missing? Like,
yes,
I know
he's a
not
lefty.
as good of an athlete as like maybe I assumed he was, just because like, yeah, I mean, I just assume all these guys are pretty good athletes, but I mean, every ball was on the money. He looked like, I mean, is it because he's left-handed? Like,
it just doesn't look
like
as smooth as it should because he's a lefty. So I think that's part of the reason. I mean, there hasn't been other.
I know he's got the injury. I mean, he looked bruised and battered in the national championship game. But again, if he's healthy, he's behind he seems big. Maybe he's not the biggest guy, but he seems big.
But like I said, I mean, he makes all the throws. I saw over the course of the Washington season, and frankly in the Indiana seasons prior to that, that is not a football school, and he took them to like 10 win seasons back-to-back years before he got hurt, transfers to Washington, almost wins the Heisman, almost wins the national title. Like, if I can get that guy with the 23rd pick or maybe even early second round, I would probably rather have him than
I think you might be able to get Bo Nix with the 23rd pick.
I don't want Bo Nix. That's another one. I've seen 5 full seasons of him.
He was on the Van Wilder plan in college too. I feel like he's been in college for like 8 years.
Yeah,
like
he
me.
was.
Forget Van Wilder. He'd be like me.
The Joey Moore plan. Yeah. No, I don't want Bo Nix. I think I don't think any team is going to look at him and say that's the franchise quarterback. I think he's closer to a Levis type.
My hot take is Caleb Williams is going to be a bust.
And I hope you're right, because the Bears have too many good vibes going on right now. And I think it's time for those to be put to bed. Before we get to the Jack and the Bum of the Week, let's just grade a couple of the big moves in free agency. Kirk to Atlanta. I've say short-term A- because they're going to win the division next year and what I think is a pretty craptastic division. But long-term, I would probably go C. I just think it's, a 36-year-old quarterback, a 4-year, $180 million deal doesn't seem like something that's going to work long-term. Again, I love Kirk, and I think he's a good dude, and I think it's a good move for that franchise. I just don't know if it works long-term. When you saw that deal, were you thinking good move or a little bit overrated?
Well, once I saw, like, you said he bought a house in Atlanta or something. I had read, again, I could be totally wrong, but I read something that, like, his wife's family is from the area or something. I'm like, once I heard that, I was like, good luck, guys. He's gone. I know. You follow the wife wherever her family is, that's what happens. But it just depends on what if you're Atlanta, whether it's the owner or the coach or the fan, what's your objective? Like, if your objective is to be relevant and potentially win the division, host a playoff game, it's a great signing. I think they have every opportunity to win the division, host a playoff game. If it's to win the Super Bowl and sustain this over the duration of his contract, no, it's not. There's no way it's going to work out. Like, with the age, the injury, he's coming off of, which again, good for him, or at least Atlanta fans, is he's never been predicated on movement. So,
right.
Like, it's not like he's going to be missing something.
And he had not missed a game in his career due to injury until that moment. So
yeah, and maybe he can really get something out of there. I mean, they've drafted a ton of skill players, like with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Like, they have players. Like, they have a decent squad. So in that division where, I mean, I don't want to discredit Tampa. I mean, they're not maybe like the best team ever, but I mean, they had a good season, and if you're Atlanta, see what happens. But
if Kirk plays the way he did in his final season with the Vikings with Atlanta, they will win the division. Like, I don't think.
I mean, he's the best quarterback in the division, I think, by a mile.
Yeah, And I mean, you have to make that move if you're Atlanta and your goal is to win the division and to.
If your goal is to win the Super Bowl, like you will, nope.
Yeah, you would have. And by the way, getting Ritter out of there too is a big bonus. So good on you, Atlanta. That dude was the bust of all busts.
Desmond mid.
Russ to Pittsburgh. I give that a D+. I just you texted me this the other day. The Justin Fields trade makes a lot of sense just because he's young and maybe they can get something out of him. But the fit with him and Russ in the locker room, oh boy.
I don't know if you got all the notifications, but I was like getting back and forth, like from, I think it was Bleacher Report. It was like, oh no, like Justin Fields coming here and it's like, oh, we're going to compete. And then like immediately the notification came out like, no, Russ is the guy. Mm-hmm. And then it came out like, no, Justin Fields chose the Steelers because they didn't have an established starter. And then it was like, boom, notification was like, no, this is Russ's team. Like we're here to develop. And it's like, the messaging with like, you know, maybe it's because I'm older and I maybe am more like cognizant of like how the media and like agents and stuff like this stuff like gets leaked, like it gets leaked on purpose. And it's like, you don't think for a second Justin Fields thinks he can go in there and like win the job. Like,
of course,
I know Russ's numbers weren't like the best, you know, or weren't like awful. But I mean, if I'm Justin Fields, like, screw you guys. Like, I'm coming in, like, I'm going to play my best and I'm going to try and win the job and, like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, and then Russ seems like the guy who'd be like, no, my office is here. This is where I park. Like, team 3, again, maybe he's toned it down a bit since he's had a little bit of, like, some come back to earth.
Yeah.
Like, last year and a half or 2 years. But, you know, like, no, this ain't. And like, I don't know, just even forget off the field stuff, but like on the field, are they better than Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett?
I mean, I would say yes, but marginally, not a lot, a little bit, just a tiny bit.
Because this isn't like Hall of Fame Russell Wilson in Seattle.
No, and by the way,
and like, there's a reason why Justin Fields was wanted by nobody, including the Bears.
He went for a 6th. And so anyone who ever tried to say Justin Fields was underrated or it was a bad situation in Chicago that didn't make him look good, like the league, all 31 other teams said, we will not give up a 5th round pick for that guy. So
I watched like a couple like reaction videos, quick react, and they were like, I can't believe Sam Darnold got this. Like, Sam Darnold is not a better player than Justin Fields. I'm like, yes, he is. Yes. Like this, Justin Fields is like one of the best athletes, like best play, like the Bears. It was a Bears podcast, like on YouTube, like best athletes we've ever drafted. I'm like, yeah, can he play receiver? Because he can't throw. Like,
there were multiple games where he was like 7 of 23 for 71 yards, and it's like
Howard talks about it all the time. And he's like, he's 10 and like 30 in his career. Like, I get it. He plays for the Bears. Like, they got their own problems, but again, like, so he's talented based on what? Like, he looks good in street clothes at the combine. Like, based on what?
Yeah,
like,
we haven't seen.
We watched him for like a couple years, and he couldn't hit water. He fell in a boat.
And another season for Tomlin where the goal is going to be 9-8. It's just treading water in Pittsburgh for the.
The only thing you can say is like at least his value. At least like Russ, they're not paying him anything. Oh yeah, it came out today. I don't know if you got it. Like, oh, Russ and Pittsburgh will talk long-term extension post after the season. I'm like, let's get to week 1, bud.
Will you be starting week 1, or are you going to do, or is Justin Fields going to do to you what you did to Matt Flynn in 2012? The running back carousel, I thought that was kind of the main highlight for me, other than the Cousins signing. So every running back changed teams. Like, we swapped out Madison for Jones, but I mean, look at all the other ones. Derrick Henry to Baltimore, Josh Jacobs to Green Bay, Pollard went to Tennessee, Eckler to Washington, Swift to Chicago, Gus Edwards to the Chargers, Mixon to Houston, Devin Singletary left. I mean, it's just like every starting running back in the league essentially switched teams. That was pretty wild. I mean, McCaffrey stays, but for the most part, everybody else swapped colors. So it's like the running back market with, obviously Saquon was the number one story there, him, jumping to Philadelphia. But like, you look at the market as a whole, clearly they must not think that the running back class in this year's draft is any good for everyone to be like, we need to get a veteran and we need to get him now on the first day of free agency. So I thought that was kind of weird. And then the defensive moves. I mean, goodbye Danielle Hunter, one of the best pass rushers in Viking history. He goes to Houston. It's essentially a swap for Grenard, who's 5 years younger than him, and we'll see if we can get some kind of similar production out of him. But I think he'll be a great fit into Miko's defense in Houston on the outside of that defense. And then you had Wilkins go to the Raiders. That was the biggest defensive deal in terms of money. I think that's a big one for the Raiders to pair him opposite side of Crosby. I think they're going to be really good on the pass rush side of things. Only question is, who the hell's going to play quarterback, and are they going to score any points? I don't think Pierce is going to have too many options there at quarterback heading into next year. But then you had Brian Burns, a guy you wanted at the deadline last year for the Niners. He went to the Giants and then quickly signed an extension. Patrick Queen to Pittsburgh. McKinney went to Green Bay. Awuzie to Tennessee. As you look throughout the league and you see all these moves, you're like, is there anybody that stood out to you like, hey, that was a surprise? Like, I think they got better.
Well, in my opinion, the top of the food chain for defense was Christian Wilkins, and big signing by the Raiders. Does it make them better wins and losses? I mean, maybe by a game. I mean, just that position doesn't really, impact it too much if you don't have a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the crazier thing is like Miami, they didn't tag him or nothing. They just like the way our cap is, like we just can't even pay you. I was like, wow, that's just like mismanaged, like 101. Like,
right.
He just goes. And then yeah, the other thing, I'm Brian Burns was a guy I wanted. The price tag, I swear last year was like 2 1s.
Yeah.
Because he still was signed for like a year. So you would have had him for like 2 playoff runs potentially. And then
they tagged him and traded him for 20 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But
good for the Giants. I mean, they need to make some kind of a splash to compete in that division.
I mean, yeah, he's in theory, him and Thibodeau should be pretty good, but Thibodeau's, is just not. He's like Chase Young light. I mean, Chase Young was at least good before he blew his knee out. Yeah, no, he was a player I wanted the Niners to get. I thought, just to go back on the running back thing, I thought Joe Mixon to the Texans are going to be really good. I think.
Yeah. They know they have the stud QB on a rookie contract. That's when you go all in. And they made the kind of moves to show they're going all in. They spent all that money on Hunter as well. So I think they're really going for it.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the whole running back thing is just, was it not this year, but last summer, they're like, we're going to have a running back union and we're going to meet and we're going to talk and we're all this. And then it's like, Austin Eckler, you're getting like $8 million from the Commanders.
And everybody's like, okay, it is what it is.
Like eventually the market is the market. Like you can complain all you want, but like, yeah. And I'm like you said, I'm pretty sure the draft this year is pretty weak on running backs for the most part.
It has to be for the kind of movement to be.
But in theory it is. But like there's going to be a guy who's taken in the 4th, 5th, 6th round who runs for 1,100 yards, and you're like, why did we pay this guy $20 million?
Yeah, and that's why the position's been so devalued. Is you can find guys in later rounds who were unheralded guys. You can get the Vikings got Dalvin Cook in the 2nd round, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe we blew a 2nd round pick on a running back. And he ends up being good for 6 years. So that's just how it is. All right, that's a quick recap of free agency, and then obviously the Super Bowl. We got to do an off-season Jack in the Bum of the Week. Obviously, this is going back a few weeks, but off-season as a whole, candidates, Broncos. They're paying Russell Wilson about $45 million a year the next 2 years. The dead cap number for him for both of those years is similar. It's one of the worst contracts and one of the worst trades in the history of sports. He's going to be, paid $90 million to play for somebody else. And when you see something like that in the NFL, that is absolutely shocking. So the Broncos have to be on that list. I'm going to put the Jets on here. I mean, they made some shrewd signings to improve the offensive line, but who gives a shit about your offensive line when your quarterback is trying to run for vice president during the season? What a freaking tire fire that is in New York. The Commanders got to be on that list. Looking at all the moves they made, I don't get what the long-term goal is there. Yes, they finally have a new owner, and that's great, but trading Sam Howell looks like they're probably going to get Drake May. Looking at who they hired for head coach. They've had some trouble filling out their staff. Obviously, all this stuff comes out about how horrible it is in that building. I just think the Commanders are due for another really bad season. And then I'm going to put my Vikings on there just because we're going to take a step back next year. There's just no way around it. The quarterback play is going to drop off massively. Yes, I was proud of all the defensive signings, but I mean, we're not going to score a ton of points next year, let's be honest. So I put them on the list. But there was one team that, yet again, after a miserable 2023, stood out as having a terrible start to the offseason.
Yeah. Quickly. Yeah. I mean, Denver easily could have made it with the Russ. I mean, that's just a franchise, just game changer in the worst way. The trade and the signing of Russ. Everything with the Jets is leaking to the media. I don't get it. Like, everything is just a dumpster fire in New York right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Commanders, I'm interested because they hired Adam Peters from us for their GM position. And he was John Lynch's like right-hand guy. And I mean, a guy that I have not wanted to lose for at least 2 or 3 years. He's been interviewing. So I'm interested to see how they do. Because he was being talked about for like, the guy who was finding some of these guys late in the rounds. And pretty sure he won Super Bowls, being in the front office with Denver and then the Patriots years ago. But we'll see. Yeah, Washington's just been a tire fire for pretty much most of my life. And I'm a little shocked the Vikings are on there. I mean, you can think about it this way. If they signed Kirk Cousins, you could make an argument that somebody would put him on a bum of the year if they signed him. So, because I don't know if that's the right, move either. But we'll see. Who knows? They could draft C.J. Stroud of 2024, and we'll see what happens. But nobody is more bummer than the Carolina Panthers, who might be the worst franchise in all sports right now, owner on down.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a graphic somewhere of their trade compensation for the first overall pick, Christian McCaffrey and Brian Burns. Ain't good. Ain't good. Like,
franchise alteringly bad.
Like Brian Burns, who it was well reported. Like I said earlier, he was going for 2-1s like the year before at the deadline. Like, and they said, no, we're going to, I don't know, maybe try and sign him, extend him, whatever. Didn't happen. McCaffrey, which at the time, even as a Niner fan, I was like, that's quite a bit for us to give up. But still, well, guess what? I'm not the one making the trades. And here we are. And it's like, wow, he's pretty good. Like, to not get a 1 from McCaffrey, I know he's a running back, but which I don't even like criticism because, again, like, he was hurt. Like, I'm trying to be fair to them. But, yeah, to not get a 1 for arguably, I mean, he won Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, you know who would like him? Bryce Young would like him. And again, forget the Bryce Young trade, drafting Bryce Young. Because if they made that same trade and drafted C.J. Stroud, no one's talking about it.
Absolutely. They would have gone like 8-8 last year. Yeah.
Like, it would have been a home run. Again, what's like the price to get that?
Frank Reich would still be the coach.
Screw DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Screw these picks.
Yeah.
Like Caleb Williams. Well, they wouldn't have had Caleb Williams because they would have been better. But like, screw it. It would have been fine. But they drafted arguably the worst quarterback I've ever seen. I mean, at least Jamarcus Russell was better. He just was lazy. Like,
the results on the
Bryce
field.
Young looks like he's playing Pop Warner. He looks like he's in Pop Warner. And to be fair to him, again, their offense personnel, terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. But again, the whole thing.
Owner on down.
What? Throwing beers in Jacksonville, wherever he was? Where was he? Throwing them somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a road game.
Yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing, Carolina?
And then you look at, I mean, they hired Canales, probably a lame duck hire. I don't see any way that guy keeps that job.
By the way,
I don't
know if you saw it, but I saw a clip of McAfee's show. And because I saw the tweet of Luke Combs sent as a Carolina Panther. You see that?
Yes. Yeah.
He was like, he basically like being a country music superstar. He just like, what are we doing? Like, he's a fan. And so like the next day or two, he was on Pat McAfee. And they asked him, they're like, hey, man, things looking up. Hired new head coach. And he was like, "You mean to tell me I get excited about our head coach who ran the 20th ranked offense in the league last year?" He just said it with a straight face. I was like,
Yeah.
"Wow, okay." Luke Combs pays attention. Like, he's like, What are we excited about? What's there to be happy about? Kobe Bryant? What did he say?
Yeah.
What's there to be happy about?
Yeah. Job's not done.
Finished.
Yeah, job's not finished.
Terrible.
Yeah. And it's
Carolina
just
Panthers, Carolina Bums.
mhm. It has to be. I mean, probably the worst team of the offseason. Their moves have all been panned. They got a very light return for Brian Burns. I just think this is it. I think, you have to be, super elite at drafting over the next few years to rescue anything for Carolina. So there it is, the Panthers. Joey's Jack and the Bum of the Week for the offseason. Welcome back to the pod, everybody. Joey and I are joined by our second guest of this season, our third guest overall, Joey's cousin, I believe, AJ. I've known you since, we both grew up in Niles. I've known you for probably over 20 years, and I learned just a few years ago that you and Joey are related. This is insane, man. Thanks for joining the pod. You wanted to come on and talk about some soccer. We'll get to that in a minute, but thanks for joining, man. Give us a little background on how you and Joey know each other.
Yeah, well, we're cousins. His grandpa and my great grandma. So through one of our family members is really into genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
So like one time he cornered me somewhere and was just like nerding out, like, you guys are third cousins once removed to the. I'm like, I didn't need all that, man. Like, I just needed like related. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, just give me the basics. Yeah. No, that's crazy because I met Joey on our first day of college and we've just been shooting the shit about sports since. And it's like, I remember mentioning you one time. He's like, "Oh, I know I'm related to that guy, but I don't know how."
That must have been my mom's brother, my Uncle Mike. That's all he does. He gave me when I was younger, he gave me this binder full of like how many presidents he's traced like our family back to. It's wild. Like, he's some famous people, but that had to be him. No one else I know who's dedicated to the craft as much as him for tracing the family tree.
Yeah, my grandpa did that same thing where it's like that's what he dedicated. Like once he was retired, all of his time was like, "Did you know that we had some Swedish family where all the women's last names were Dottir, daughter, because they didn't have their own last names back then." I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, what are we doing here?
It's a dangerous job. You might find something you don't want to find. He did it for Kayla. He did it for hers, and he was like, "You get to this one," and he's like, "I don't know what went on here." But this is when they get entangled.
You're like, oh boy.
Me and Kayla are 13th cousins.
Oh my God. Let's not go down that path because I guess
we're gonna get a whole different audience here.
Yeah, we don't want any of that. All right, so let's give everybody a background on AJ. So give us your favorite sports teams in every league, because obviously I know you're the biggest fan of Croatian national soccer team that there is, but give us your favorite team across all the sports so we know where you may have a bias or two.
If you asked me a couple years ago, I wouldn't be as embarrassed, but the Oakland Athletics are my favorite Major League Baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, the NFL. I used to be more of a bigger Steelers fan, but I like the league in general. My mom grew up a big Steelers fan, so her stepdad's family is from Pittsburgh, so she kind of just grew up like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors in the NBA, obviously, even before they changed the jerseys and started rattling off championships. So that was
back
good.
When it was Antoine Jameson and Jason Richardson.
Oh my God! Some of those guys, Eric Dampier. I was a big Andres Bianchis fan, and then he just started. He couldn't hit a free throw, and I was just like, "What happened?" I was just, like a family member was getting sick in front of my eyes. I'm like, "What's wrong with him?"
We loved Biedrins back in the day, and like a lot of
our. I'm gonna be honest. I think Jason Richardson was my first ever favorite player. Like, maybe in any sport.
Jay Rich was so cool. He was so
I
cool.
had the dunk contest posters in my room when I was a kid.
And we were, as Warriors fans, we were like, this is as good as it's going to get. Our guy just won the dunk contest.
He was winning dunk contest, but we were players in the actual game.
Yeah.
All-stars. We're like, oh my God, someone's just there wearing the jersey? It was great.
When we were in school, the Kings were the popular team. Everyone was wearing like Bibby jerseys everywhere.
Yeah.
Bibby and Weber and Doug Christie and Vlade Divac, and everybody was like, "Oh, the Sacramento's our team." I'm like, "That is 3 hours."
You don't even know where that is on a map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. But okay, Warriors, and then we're having you on mostly because you really wanted to talk about soccer. So I know you like a lot of teams. You're wearing a Bayern Munich beanie there,
Yeah.
but like, who are your favorite soccer teams in some of the leagues?
I like Bayern. I don't know. Just usually how it goes down is like, do you have a Croatian on your team? Yes or no? And it's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. So
Bayern had Mandzukic, and you're like,
Bayern had Mandzukic even before that. Ivica Olic was there. Yeah, I mean, Real Madrid just because Luka Modric. But actually, one of my friends from Washington, Jerome Quaresma, he's a big soccer fan. He's really kind of one of the guys who got me into it. He loved Real Madrid. He was a big Madrista, as they say. So, you know, I would the shit with him. In the EPL, I mean, it used to be Chelsea had Pulisic and they had Kovacic, so it's like they had an American and a Croatian. It was like double whammy. Now they're both gone, and I'm like, do I switch? Like, I don't know. Like,
so yeah, I mean, I find that when we're going back and forth on Twitter, it's almost always about soccer, and it's like there could be nothing, you know, bigger than a World Cup, a Champions League final, you know, Premier League games where the title's being decided. Like, this is as big as it gets outside of, you know, maybe the Super Bowl in the United States. But then like all of this stuff is just massive. And we're always talking about it. We're like, oh, I can't believe Real Madrid lost in the semifinals of the Champions League. Oh, look at Croatia with their epic run to the World Cup semifinals again when everybody wrote them off. Like all these great stories. And here at home, like, we have the best of everything in this country. If you're the best baseball player, you move to America like Shohei Ohtani did. If you're the best basketball player like Jokic, you move to America. And yet we're given this shit-ass MLS product, and, like, nobody likes to shit on the MLS more than you. So, like, don't we deserve better, man, as American sports fans? Like, we deserve the best.
I want to say, like, within the last 25 years of MLS growing like that, it's great. It's doing a great job. I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of like an identity, like where they're from now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. One jotted down was like, you know, they have. You don't want to be retirement league, where he goes and just kind of washed up their career, but it's like, but you need was like other stuff, you know, Pirlo's and stuff that come in and, like, you know, Gary Sport Messi. Now you're seeing, you know, but also promoting it. Dallas, well, we're selling all these players. Like, okay, so you're a development league, but then people get all offended. Like, oh no, I'm not a development league. You can compete with anybody else, and it's like, well, like, oh, you could send the MLS team into the championship and you compete, and it's just like, I don't know.
We see it in the Bay Area with the earthquakes. It's like, I mean, obviously you see this throughout the league, but you'll find, you know, a young Argentinian star somewhere, or, you know, you'll find some young player who's a star, but then you have to sign him to this format that they have, the designated player contract. And then you get situations where it's like Miami right now. They have Messi, the greatest player of all time. They have Suarez, one of the greatest strikers of all time, and Busquets, one of the greatest midfielders of all time. And all the guys who were passing them the ball were at like the University of Dayton 2 years ago. Like, it's like, and they're making like $65K a year. And you're like, how is this happening? Like, every other league in the world, you at least have someone who's like young and up and coming. And here it's like the majority of the players on all of these teams get drafted in the MLS Super Draft from like the University of North Carolina, as opposed to in Europe, these guys have been with their club since they were 6 years old. Like, the system is just so broken, and the product suffers because of it, right?
Yeah. Well, you look at even like you were, you know, Ohtani comes here because the MLB's the best. You know, Jokic, all that situation. All of our guys on playing in Europe have been there since they were 15. You know, they've been at all these clubs already. So it's like, yeah, the MLS, they're not even drafting these players right into the league because they're not available to draft. Right. So, I mean, I think I think it's ridiculous. Like, if you're gonna be this league, like almost like how Saudi, let's just dump a bunch of money into it. Like, why are we capping it? Why are we limiting this league?
Right.
You want to attract good talent? Let these guys spend. Let them spend and pay all these places. But they want this parity of the league, which is good to a degree. But you look at the NBA, the league is the back of the Celtics and the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just how it is. The MLB is Yankees, right? Like,
yeah.
Team until
and that's just,
it's like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's something that I think, first of all, MLS was founded in, I think it was 96, off the back of the 94 World Cup in the U.S. We got the World Cup coming to the U.S. in 2 years, and it's like, what progress have we made? We were told when Beckham signed with the Galaxy that this was going to be a completely different league, and now it's like this massive opportunity that we have where everybody's going to be sucked into these games for 2 months. You're not going to be like, oh, come watch these guys in a month when MLS restarts. It's like, how do we fix this, I guess, is the question. Like, we have all this momentum with all these good young American players. Granted, none of them are playing in MLS, but you know, say we have a Cinderella run to the semifinals in 2026. How would you change MLS to try to like make soccer more popular in this country, other than just like all of us watching all the European games on TV?
Sorry, but back to so the big thing was, right, MLS team hadn't won the newest version of CONCACAF Champions League, like Seattle wins it a couple years ago. Great, cool. But like, if that's the goal, right? The goal is to be not only good domestically, but be dominant on the continent, to be a big brand. Like, let's do it. Let's do it. Like, having a team dominate Champions League, rattle off, basically be the Real Madrid of North America, it's good for your league. It's good for your brand. Like, I know the parity or whatever of all of it, but like, it's good to have a brand to put out there. And that's what the Galaxy was early, like, right, with Beckham and Lance Donovan and stuff. But you've seen them fall off, right? So it's like, the league's great. It's parity. We have all these better teams. It's like recognizable now, it feels like.
Right. It's like, you almost want to be like, get rid of the salary cap and make it like MLB so that someone can emerge as the Yankees, as the Real Madrid, and just sign all these guys. But
and let them not be pushed for just dump to, someone, Mario Balotelli. I don't know or whatever, but like, we're going to fly around 2 years, whatever, 48 million, whatever it is, right? It doesn't work. He's not really good. Just cut like dead money fund, like, look for it almost, right? You want to risk, you get for it.
I don't think, as a third party partial observer to the sport of football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, I hate to say it to MLS fans, but the MLS is a lot closer to the XFL than the EPL. Like, not just in terms of players, but in terms of just brand. I think, to be honest, it's just the reason why MLB and the NFL, obviously the NFL, no one else plays it for the most part, but MLB, NBA, and if you even want to throw in the NHL there, this, like, by far is the best league on planet Earth. And just the MLS will never be the best league on Earth. That's going to be somewhere in Europe. If you want, I think if you wanted to make more the sport of soccer more popular in America, I actually think it has a better success of the sport itself being better. If the whatever, there wouldn't be a league. I would say there's much better chance at operating if the United States wanted 2 or 3 expansion teams of the EPL. Like, how the NFL is trying to go to London potentially? Like, if you want to be, considered big, like, why don't you have a New York team in the EPL? And like, this whole nation could get behind, like, we'd be in the big league. Like, we'd have a team in the big leagues. Like who cares? Like, Doncic goes to the Dallas Mavericks. Like, no one cares where he's from, like America, or like, he's like, look at this guy. Like, you could bring a guy from Spain, put him in the New York Yankees of the EPL. And like, I think you could get behind that more than you get behind the New York City Red Bull, whatever the hell they're called. No one cares.
I agree. I think when this, like Eric was saying, cup or whatever, that's where this company's going this country's going to get behind it. We're going to get behind a national team that does good, produces players, right? But it's just involved in playing.
Right? More than anything, America likes winners. Like, I mean,
100%.
America knows that the MLS sucks. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the, like, doesn't Japan, like, they have a pretty good baseball league, but it's like, it's not MLB. Like, Shohei's like, get me out of here. Like, I'm going to the big leagues. Like America, we're that for soccer. Like, I think soccer would be so much bigger again, I'm not trying to like delete all these teams and these leagues here. There's probably some diehard Earthquakes fan listening to this. Maybe,
no,
probably not.
No, there isn't.
But like, you mean to tell you couldn't put like a New York City, whatever, Philly, LA, I don't know, put it in the EPL? Like, I don't know how that works with time zone. I feel like
obviously the English,
I feel like it could work.
Yeah, obviously, like Liverpool would be like, fuck no, we're not going to have any.
I'm not going to come play in Boston.
Yeah,
but the NFL's talking like, like we're giving you the NFL. Why don't you come here?
What all the European teams tried to do last year.
There's going to be a London NFL team eventually, don't you think?
Right.
If I know where Eric's going with this, if they do a Super League, that'd be interesting.
That's the thing, is like all the European teams, they wanted a couple of years ago to form a Super League, which would be like outside of the Champions League and the Premier League and all that. And it would be these teams who essentially form their own league. It would be all the, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Chelsea, all the big teams in Europe forming their own league with no promotion relegation, just essentially creating an NFL style model on top of all their other leagues. And maybe if they create a league like that and then add some American teams into it, that could be a product that could work. But I mean, the thing that's killing us right now is just like I was saying, like, oh my God, they would hate it. I mean,
furious.
Yeah, they'd be like, this is a joke. We don't want to have to play the Seattle Sounders, We got to do a 14-hour flight to Quest Field in Seattle for Barcelona to play
on turf.
Yeah, to play on artificial turf. Oh my God, it would be such a disaster. We're huge soccer fans, Joey. You usually only watch the game when the World Cup comes around, but we know greatness when we see it. Like, if you're watching the World Cup final last time around, everyone in the world who watched that was like, "Oh my God, is this the greatest game I've ever seen?" Yeah. And then when I got some tickets a few years ago to one of the first Earthquakes games at their new stadium. And I just remember being like, I feel like I'm at one of my Cal State East Bay soccer games, just like, let's hoop the ball up in the air 40 yards down the field and hope someone can head it down. And it's just like, I don't know how we fix this. We crap on the product all the time. I like the idea of, trying to just promote an American team into Europe, but it's not going to work like that. Like, I just hope we can find a way to figure something out.
If the MLS had an all-star team, put them in New York. It's closer to like London.
They do. They for the all-star break, and they play like an EPL team.
They probably get
Arsenal or something. They get their ass kicked every time.
And it's not even the starters.
This is like the longest yard, except it's the longest pitch. It's like we're playing the guards. It's a tune-up game.
The one a couple years ago was the MLS All-Stars against Arsenal, and Arsenal sent
nobody.
Yeah, they sent nobody, and they won 5-0. And I was like,
us three could have been out there. We would have probably still won.
It was unbelievable.
The three of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been us on Arsenal, and it's just
no. But I mean, seriously, like an expansion team, like everyone the MLS, like you go, like you're now undrafted free agents. The entire EPL, whatever you want, EPL, the La Liga, whatever league you want. I think it. I could be wrong, but is the EPL still the best league out there?
It's the best, yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. Well, we get an expansion draft, and we'll put it in New York City, like it's closest to London. Put it New York City, Miami, I don't know, Philly, one of those, and that's it. Because I think there's just no way. I mean, there's just no way getting around the MLS is. I mean, forget like AAA. It's got to be like single A, if that.
Yeah.
The EPL.
But you know what? Too, another problem with that too, right? So every summer before I go back to something, like I want to get my family something a little here and there. And last year I go to Dick's, right? I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll shirt or something. Give it to my cousin. And can't full jersey, it's $175. Like,
absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Myself and someone else I know soccer. If I wanted to get my son later, ridiculous amount for like the popularity of, like, I don't know, that's outrageous.
It's insane that they think they have this premium product. Like, you go to I've been to a couple games down here. One of them was LAFC against LA Galaxy, and it's like, I don't know, it just feels like inauthentic. Like, there's this chanting section behind the goal for LAFC that the team's been around for 2 years. Like, what attachment have you built to it? It just all feels so synthetic. So it's like, please let U.S. soccer figure something out in the wake of the next World Cup so that we have some kind of a product.
I could be biased, but I think I'm onto something.
But that's the thing. It's like, we got to get Joey's point
when
of view.
When Brady went to Germany, like, that thing was like, didn't they have like millions of people on the wait list or whatever? Like, you mean to tell me, like, whoever the big star, or even like Brady at the time was, and towards the end of his career, you give me a guy actually in his prime, the EPL, come to like America, like there's appetite for the sport. We just don't want mid. We don't want mid LS. That's what it is. Like,
see, this is why it's good. Usually when we talk about hockey, I am the guy that knows nothing, and Joey has to chime in. Now that we're talking about soccer, Joey's not an expert in it, but he's given us the view of the average American, and it's like
if you're soccer, the goal is to get me to watch, because I'm a sports fan. Like, I have time. Well, I don't have time anymore. I have no time. But if I did, like, I'd watch. But like, you turn on the MLS, it's like
I like soccer.
Like, I like EPL. I'd rather watch 6 a.m. EPL than 1 o'clock MLS.
For sure.
And I know zero people in the Premier League.
I think,
does David Beckham still play?
No.
Does he still bend it?
No.
He's 50-something years old.
I think that's another thing, right? So they get Messi to come in, right? And it's like, hey, we're going to get all eyeballs on Messi. But then they put like most of their games behind Apple TV.
Yeah.
So what the fuck? Like, I now have to buy Apple TV.
But like,
I'm not gonna watch MLS. I'm gonna buy Apple TV.
I don't think that's their fault though. Like, I think like the TV broadcasts are like, someone has to pay for it. Like, the reason why the NFL's on, like, like I bitch and moan all the time about the NHL being on ESPN Plus. Like, they're on ESPN like once a week, but like, someone's got to pay for it. Granted, they used to be on the Outdoor Live Network. That was good times.
I agree because like I wasn't on the bandwagon like when everybody was bitching about the playoff game on Peacock, right? I'm like, guys, it's one game, it's a playoff game, like, it's whatever, like, I know
you're gonna watch it, yeah,
we still had like 20-something million.
But now I don't get to watch the best player in your league. One of the, I'm a Ronaldo guy, but one of the best players of all time, the best player of all time, right? Get like 80% games unless I pay. Like,
it's very Major League Baseball to do that, is to just like cut off your nose to spite your face and be like, we have this amazing thing, but you can't see it. Like, yet another chapter in the disastrous history of MLS. Obviously, that's like the main reason we wanted to have you on is we had to get some soccer on this pod, but we got to talk about the A's a little bit. I mean, you're, East Bay till you die. I'm the same way. Joey's the same way. This whole thing has been a farce. So as someone who, like, Joey's been detached from the A's for a bit, and I can't blame him, and I know you're kind of in that same boat. All these ups and downs over the last, few months of, are they leaving? Are they not? Now they're back at the table with Oakland trying to get a 3 or 4 year extension to their lease signed. Like, what is the mood in the Bay right now? Is it just like complete and total indifference to the A's in this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I feel like it's just one of my cousins actually, she kind of messages me like, so what's going on with them? Like, are they staying? Like, and I'm like, no one knows. Like, who knows? Like,
literally no one.
No one knows. Yeah, and like anytime there's a new stadium render, Eric, how many fucking new stadium renders have you seen in your life?
It's what is it? 6, 7?
Until shovel in the ground somewhere. Don't show me a stadium render. I don't care. They all look great. They all look amazing. They're not real. They're not real.
Remember where they were going to put Cisco Field in Fremont, right by Pacific Commons? And I was like, oh my God.
It's going to be
a 10-minute drive from, my childhood home to the A's game. Oh, this is going to be tremendous. That got shot down quick. And now this Vegas thing is just, oh.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, they tried, like, I don't remember the last maybe 3 or 4 years, probably before COVID when I went to the last A's game. And what they did to the treehouse was nice. It was cool. It just wears off if your product sucks after a while too, right? And then, I mean, it's hard to get people to go. Like, the Giants Stadium, AT&T is way nicer, Oracle, whatever you want to call it. Like, it just is. It's just a better day at the park. It's just a better experience. It is what it is. Like, I've kind of come to peace with that. My son's going to grow up here without the A's. Like, that's just what it is. Like, he'll probably be a Giants fan and, like, whatever. I'll have a little bit of resentment. It's not his.
And it's not the East Bay's fault. Like, obviously the local Oakland government takes some blame in all of this, but like the East Bay fans in the past, year and a half have really showed out with, their boycotts, and they're going to do it again by boycotting opening day and doing like, all the people are going to be in the parking lot. Nobody's going to enter the stadium. It might be an attendance of like 100 people max. It's going to be cool, like all the stuff that is done to try to stop this move from happening, but it does seem inevitable. It's just like, Joe, you've pointed this out for years. Baseball as a whole is dropping off in popularity, but what these owners are doing to the fans in everywhere, it just happened in Milwaukee and Kansas City too, where they're like, hey, we're going to leave if you don't give us this amount of money. And of course they forked it over. And it's just like, this sport is dying because of the people at the top, and it's just a complete joke. You had the fucking Kansas City Chiefs, the #1 team in sports right now, just say we might move last week. That's what the owner said on one of those conference calls. Like, what a freaking joke has this sports become.
Really? I didn't see that.
When your brand's at an all-time high, it's like we might bounce. It's like, what?
Yeah, they're asking for $1 billion to renovate Arrowhead Stadium, and he said one of the options would be leaving Kansas City, and I was just like,
I'm not freaking leaving.
Where does sports go from here, man? It's just devastating.
Is that $1 billion? Is that how much it is to put in a Taylor Swift suite there?
Yeah, have her pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, she's good for it. Good Lord.
Easy.
It's crazy. Like, and then I don't know. So like Vegas is obviously on the table. Maybe, who knows? Salt Lake City interests me, but here's the thing about Salt Lake City. Like, they have a gap to fill. They're like, we want a team. I've never heard them say like, we would take the A's. Right? Yeah. They're just like, we want a team. Like, but they're not like committed to like trying to.
Vegas doesn't seem to want the A's much either. There was that great video a few weeks ago of it was like the Vegas Chamber of Commerce meeting, and of course Cavill and Fisher are there, and the woman who's introducing the A's before they do their pitch to everybody goes, the Las Vegas A's, and there was literally no reaction from the 5,000 people, and she goes, are we alive out there? And it's like, this thing is going to fail as long as Fisher is the owner, no matter where they go. If they go to Sacramento, Salt Lake, Vegas, the Moon, it doesn't matter. They're going to be a total disaster. So it's like, it's just so sad to see what's happened to the East Bay. We used to have, I mean, the Raiders were gone for a little bit there in the early 90s, but we used to have 3 super historic, awesome franchises that all 3 of us grew up being around, not necessarily as Raider fans or whatever, but just as like, hey, we have these things and now we don't, and it freaking sucks, dude. And Joey, you've been talking about this for years. It's like the sports in the East Bay, especially among young people, you have Kayla's cousins that you talk to all the time. Like, people don't seem to really be attached to the teams as much anymore. It's just the players, because the teams are all doing this shit where, they extort the city for money or they leave. Like, it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
I just think in general, like, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how to separate the interest with baseball itself and the interest in the A's. Cause like, I don't blame like where my fandom with the A's, I don't blame I don't even know if it's like 50% on them itself. Like, it's just like the sport itself. I don't know. Like, it's just not. And part of the reason why I loved baseball, well, I guess it has changed because like the whole like hitting it in the gap and like moving a runner, like all that stuff is dead. It's like you watch 4 hours of it and it's a walk, a strikeout, or a bomb. Like, A home run doesn't mean a home run anymore because it happens every inning. Pitchers, like seeing a complete game is, you might as well see the moon fly across. Like, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
Like, it's the sport itself is different. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's TV too, but like the gap between the NFL and everything used to be huge. It's just getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
we were talking about like, the World Cup and Premier League and Champions League. I feel like that is the closest thing to the NFL now. And the gap between NFL and that is large. And then the gap between that and everything else is getting even bigger. Because I think the NHL and NBA product are pretty bad right now too. So it's like, where do we go?
So one thing I heard a while back was basically what is good about the NFL is they own TV real estate, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sundays, Monday, even Saturday with college football. But like you see them sneaking into like NBA used to be NBA on Christmas. Now all of a sudden it's like, not if it falls on a Sunday or Monday, like you better watch out.
Yep.
I think that's what the EPL I feel like is doing really well. Like Saturday, Sunday, and they have a big Monday fixture, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the league. Smart. Like it's your crucial fixtures, put the brands on, right? Back to the A's too, it's like you're trying to be the least the least productive brand in a sport that's dying. Like,
right.
What do you like your product like already? It's not like it's not they're trying to the race back in the day and they're making that can't do it. Like I don't know. I don't.
It's brutal because it's like, what are they supposed to do when the sport itself is in trouble? We saw, I think Baltimore recently sold, like the Orioles sold for something like 200 million under what the Forbes estimate was for what the team was worth. Like, we're finally, because our whole lives teams have gone from being worth 100 million, 200 million. I was just
about to say, like, so eventually going to stop.
It has to go down at some point, and I think baseball is leading the way on that.
Was Shohei signed for like $1 billion? And I just like legitimately, I know it's like the Dodgers, but like, where are they getting this money from?
I know.
Like
they said they expected to make about almost 80% of that back in the first 3 years, just off deals with Japan and stuff like that. Which but it's crazy.
That's huge.
But yeah, again, he's a unicorn. It's like the rest of the league,
But I think back to Joey's point, like stealing, hitting in the gap, all that stuff, all the stuff you see in the postseason that makes postseason games exciting. It's a different sport than the regular season.
Right.
Like I think, again, like I said, they don't own any real estate as far as TV time goes. I think they need to shorten the season again.
I was just about to say that. They need to do what golf did. Get it over before football's here.
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to see baseball in the World Series be played in the snow. Like,
no.
Like, no. I mean, short it. They should cut it in half.
Well, they always do the World Series.
Pay the players the same amount because the interest would be up. Create urgency. There's no urgency.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you lose today?
None.
Whatever. We play tomorrow at 12:30. Like,
exactly. I mean, like I said, I get the fall classic. It's got this prestige or whatever, all this stuff. And I was a big baseball guy. I always dreamed about playing the World Series, all that stuff. But I don't know. Yeah, like Joey said, lean into it. Be done by August. Like, let's go. And then too, like, you got this. Is the season starting next week?
Yeah.
In Korea? What? Like, I don't know. Like, they're gonna start it, but then it's confusing. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
They need to go April to August.
Yeah, it's like
April, May, June, July, play every day. And August is the postseason.
Yeah, 100%.
We were talking about that a little bit last year, and I was like, you could do spring training like mid-January to mid-February, and then start the season in mid-February and have it end August 31st or something. But the maximum you could fit in there is maybe like 95 games or something. And it's like, wouldn't that be ideal? Like, everybody talks about, oh, the records won't matter anymore. 73 homers in a season. It's never going to happen.
Well, the records ain't going to matter because ain't nobody going to watch.
Exactly. Things are going to have to change.
Like, I don't think, like, kind of your point, AJ, about like the sport. I think there used to be a little bit more of like a little respect between each of the leagues. Like, I think the NFL could have dominated Christmas 20 years ago. They just like, oh, the NBA, like, but they just eventually got to the point, like, screw you. We worked hard for this product. It's better than yours. We don't care. Like, make your product better.
They smell blood in the water. They smell blood in the water.
Yeah, they're just like, we don't care. Like, and again, like, they've earned that. Like, right now, the other sports have to work around it until they get popped. The NBA, as much as I shit on the NBA, used to be with Michael Jordan in the 90s.
Huge.
Like, their numbers were gigantic. And they're just toast. And I'd say number one is like, oh, I don't know, the players played. Like, we just take days off for no reason. Like, what a concept.
They're complaining, right? They've been complaining about Joel Embiid, right, not qualifying for the award. I guess you have to qualify for the MVP now.
Yeah.
You have to play a minimum of 65 games. They're like, it's not fair, blah, 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 blah. No MVP in the last, like, 40 years has played less than 65 games and won the award. So, like, that's almost, it's a prerequisite. Like, you just have to play. Like, how can you be the most valuable player and you play, like, half the season? Like, that doesn't exist. Like, it's not how it goes.
All these people just love Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is rolling over in his grave.
Yeah.
And all these people who don't want to play basketball.
Yeah.
Like, if you were on the Lakers with Kobe Bryant, you said, I'm going to sit this one out. He said, you can also be on the unemployment line. Okay? Like, we're playing.
Well, what about when he showed up? They were talking about when he showed up on the trade deadline day to practice, right? And he had a broken finger. So he wasn't even, they're like, we haven't seen Kobe in weeks. And he's been rehabbing. And then they're like, Kobe, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I just came to say bye to half you guys bums who are about to get traded today.
We could, I mean, I'm not even a basketball fan, but like, I saw the Kobe, I think it was like the E60 on like the Redeem team. You know, the one that like, they got embarrassed. Like, yeah. And so like LeBron was telling this story about how Kobe Bryant, like the guys were going out on the town, whatever it was. And Kobe's like, I'm not going. We got practice in the morning. They're like, oh, come on. And he's like, I'll go out with you guys, but like, you guys better practice with me. And I practice at like 4 a.m. or whatever. And they said, okay. And so they went on like, you know, had a few beverages, I'm sure, whatever. Kobe, like LeBron said, Kobe had a few too, but like they said the next morning, hotel knock, knock. Kobe was like 4 a.m. Like, let's go. Like, we're practicing. And it's like, today it'd be like, nah, I make way too much money. I'm not practicing. Like, it's just,
the fact
if you tell the fans you don't care, the fans won't care either. And again, the prices just keep going up. Like, I mean, think about it. Family of 4 go to a Warrior game.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine going to a Warrior game? You might still see your players because the Warriors like still have Steph Curry, but imagine you go and like you're here to see Dallas and like Luka doesn't play. You're just like, what? What are we doing?
You just spent like $800, $900 all in to get the 4 of you in, and you're sitting in the nosebleeds, and it's like, oh, Clay is sitting this one out, and Luka's out as well.
It's even worse for like the Kings because everyone would come here, right? They'd have the road trip. They'd hit both the Northern California teams. Everyone would probably play the Warriors. Warriors been good. It's a big game, probably on TNT. Then they hit Sacramento the next night, and like everyone's not playing. Like, like Miami would come here with like LeBron and Dwayne Wade. They're like, no, we ain't playing.
Yeah, I know. I parked at Chase Center when I went to a Giants game last year at $65, and it's not even an event parking. Like, so it's I couldn't imagine. And
I heard somebody say it was 100 in the playoffs for the Warriors.
I'm sure. And Steph's the only dude who moves the needle in the league. Like you look at the ratings, like it's last 25 playoff games or finals, highest rated finals games. He's like 23 of them.
Right, like that 2019 finals against Toronto kind of felt like the last time the NBA felt big time or like even remotely close to the NFL. The bubble tournament, nobody was watching, and then no one cared. The Bucks one, it was like way low on the ratings. You're like,
but like what you said, too, AJ. Like baseball, the playoffs, I feel like is big. Like even the NBA playoffs don't feel big. The MLB, like they need to get those types of games like happening in June.
I think,
and not just September, NBA, October.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the NBA, like, I think they could go back to, I think the first round used to be 5 games, if I'm not mistaken, when I was younger. I think they should go back to that in the playoffs. Like, I mean, 7-game series, especially there's, 3 or 4 rounds. Like, the MLB is not as many rounds, right, of 7-game series. So, it's, you get to see the LCSs and the World Series, really. But I think they should go back to that because it just feels too long.
Oh
like, April to June.
Well, they should like it. They don't like playing either anyway. So
I don't know how we got to, basically shitting on the NBA here when we were talking about the A's. But no, it's like this is kind of the gripe for sports fans among all sports is, number one, everything gets more expensive year after year. There's never been a time where the prices have gone down in our lifetime. The player salaries go up, the ticket prices go up, but the product itself, isn't like it was when we were younger. And it's like, going back to the A's, I don't know how they could have obviously run this any worse than they already have. But like, say that I do get exactly what I want and somehow Fisher sells the team, Lacob buys them, and they stay in Oakland and they get a new stadium. What are the odds that that is successful? Zero. Probably it's much higher than the Vegas A's under Fisher.
That was -0.
That one's -0. But for that, the sport as a whole is struggling. What are the odds that this thing actually succeeds, even if we get everything we hope?
That's the thing. I was gonna say, even if this went well, like recently, like I don't know, maybe it got to the point that Northern California couldn't take 2 baseball teams.
I mean, they couldn't take 2 football teams. They couldn't take 2,
I agree. You know what? And honestly, this is like
there's too many things to do out here.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing too, like with the NBA, like sorry, not to get back to the NBA, but like with the A's too, like you're saying, it doesn't support 2 teams in this area anymore. They're talking about expansion in the NBA. Like you're going to add 2 more teams.
Every sport,
like you guys need contraction. Not to say, like you should get rid of 4 or 5 teams. Like
Every time I hear the word expansion, they're saying part of the negotiation between the A's and the city of Oakland is the city of Oakland is saying, we will give you 3 or 4 years free at the Coliseum. You can stay here for free if you guarantee us an expansion team in like 2030 or whatever. I'm like, why in the world would baseball expand? Tampa Bay, I believe, hosted a playoff game last year with like 11,000 fans. Like,
Eric, what do you think? Do you think baseball could use promotion relegation?
Oh, you're talking about?
Doesn't soccer like?
First of all, they should have that in MLS.
They got that right.
They should have that in every sport.
They should have that in the MLS. But so in the MLB, like the one thing I heard about that for a while was like, oh, well, MLB stadiums are bigger, the minor league stadiums, blah, this and this and that. Okay, cool, but nobody's going to your game anyway. So what do you care about butts in the seats? Like nobody's coming anyway. And then you look at like Luton Town, right? They just got promoted in the EPL. Like their stadium's a cracker box.
It's unbelievable.
It's tiny. It's literally in a neighborhood.
Yeah. I don't know if Joey's seen this, but there's a team that's in the Premier League right now that they've just been managed super well. Their stadium is literally like in like a fucking shanty town neighborhood. Like you walk out of section 106 and you're in some guy's backyard and he's doing his laundry. Like it's that small a team. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, I would love that in American sports. I think it's a way to incentivize teams to like always try hard.
Screw the lottery. Like you're getting relegated.
Yeah.
Well, it makes your product good at the end of the year, right? Because this is another good thing for the EPL is like all of a sudden, if you're 15 to 20, right, you're in that sweet spot of 3 or 4 teams. Like you still have to play hard at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many times do we see that in the NFL where it's like, hits Thanksgiving, it's like Jags gone, like Lions gone, yeah, like shit like that, where it's just like, all of a sudden it's like, hey, your ass is gonna go down. Like you'd be like, okay, maybe I'll take a couple more snaps. Like I don't know.
And obviously,
is it like every year though? And I don't even in the EPL like
every year. 3 teams go up, 3 teams go down.
Awesome.
So say like this year, the Bengals, like Burrow goes down, they finish like they just get relegated because he like it's not like you have to finish like you have to finish in the bottom like 5, like 3 out of 4.
What and then you promote the Alabama Crimson Tide up into the NFL.
But football be a little hard just because like football be a little hard because that like right you're so quarterback dependent, right? Burrow goes down, it's like, well, what are you gonna do? Like
and there is no minor league football. Like,
I don't think
there absolutely do it with baseball.
Football's too violent to tank. I feel like as much as like
football,
some of them do, but like I feel like it's way worse in like hockey and baseball or basketball.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm 1,000,000%. Sharks would be in the AA by now. They'd be. I agree.
I mean, other than the Niners, it is a dark time for Bay Area sports right now. Like, obviously, the Giants have sucked for almost a decade now. They had that one fluke season. The Warriors are definitely at the very, very end of that epic run. The freaking Earthquakes are a disaster. The Sharks are an absolute disaster for the last 5 years. I mean, it is rough sledding right now, and nobody has it worse than the Oakland A's, who might go another 110 loss season this year. And it's like, obviously, I've been the biggest A's fan anybody's known their whole life, and it's like this thing that I've wanted more than anything, even more than the Vikings winning the Super Bowl. I wanted to see the A's win a World Series at the Coliseum, and it's like, oh, it may not even they may not even be playing in Oakland beyond this season. It's heartbreaking, but it's like, you guys bring up so many good points of why sports in general is kind of tanking towards this. The fans are becoming apathetic. They're like, I can't spend money on this bullshit. You know,
I said this, like, I think sometime last year we did a podcast, and I brought up the analogy of, like, I know a guy who's super into like Marvel and Disney, like his wife too. And like people get like, we're sports fans, but like people, they're equally like diehard Mickey Mouse people. I don't get it, but it's a thing. Like you look at some of their memorabilia, like you get like a signed Mickey Mouse bobblehead, like that shit goes, it's pretty expensive, you know, like I don't even like Mickey Mouse, and my kids got Mickey everywhere. Like people just give it. And my thing is, like, they're trying to create these movies now, you'll see, where like, oh, this character like used to look like this, and now they made it like a woman, or now they made it's like that's it. You don't understand, like, the people like Mickey, or like the way these characters are, they were this. Like they weren't like this because an actor played it. Like, no, they were designed this. And like you make it anything else, it's just like that's real. Like Mickey Mouse is real. And like to you, Eric, and like to most people, the Oakland A's are real. Like they're the Oakland A's. And what's coming is like the fact that in your head that this thing that you've believed, like Santa, is real. And now you're being told, like, no, it's just some guy's pet. Like it's John Fisher's toy. And like he can move it wherever he wants. It doesn't have to ask you for your opinion. Like, doesn't matter. Right. Like, it completely makes everything Fantasyland, and you don't want to. These fans don't want to hear that it's Fantasyland. It's real. Like this stuff is real to people. And like,
if you took the pinstripes off the Yankees and made them play in like orange and purple or something like that, people would be pissed.
Yeah, no, it's that's what they are. And the only I guess if you're not a total like anti-sport, like you can say, well, maybe this is just the A's problem, and not just like, because this. I don't care how badly run the Yankees are, would never have this happen. Like, so it's.
But you're seeing it in some other sports. You see teams like
it is.
You know,
like,
the Raiders and Chargers.
The Chiefs, like, what the hell are you doing?
There's certain teams, Raiders, Chargers, Rams, that like every one of their home games is 80% the other team's fans, and it's like, what's the point of even having a team? So it can go a bunch of ways. I think if the A's succeed in moving to Vegas and Fisher is still the owner or even part owner, it is going to be a total shit show. But the question is, you know, whether or not sports can succeed long term given all the headwinds against it. And I mean that by saying everything other than the NFL, because as usual, the NFL's fine, but the other sports are all
some of these sports, like the salary cap's going down.
Yeah, when is that going to happen? Like that
probably won't happen until after, like they all. I feel like they all just signed like TV deals. So.
Yeah, after those
wasn't that part of the thing? Like the TV contracts were like asking for their numbers, and the owners were kind of like, no, like we don't really want to share that.
I feel like, well, the NFL doesn't have the problem, but and with the NHL, I feel like theirs were already so low. I don't think it. I mean, it always could go lower.
Well, you've seen with MLB the whole thing where Diamond Sports Group went bankrupt. So I believe 5 teams this season have no cable provider, and MLB has just picked it up and they're doing it for them, and they're just like putting it on the internet for free. And I'm like, that should be a sign that baseball is dying.
Like, I got to be honest, doesn't the A's like have to cost like NBC money?
I'm so
like
deep in
they
this
lose
whole thing.
money putting them on NBC. They have to.
Joey, I want you to guess, because I know the exact number. How much do you think NBC Sports California pays the Oakland A's every year to air their games?
Oakland A's? Oh no, it's got to be zero.
I know the number. And AJ, do you have a guess?
Like, I would think the A's pay them.
No.
You would hope. Like somebody talk about me, please.
$67 million a season. is what NBC Sports California pays the A's. And I promise you they do not get that kind of revenue from the game broadcast. So there is no way. How many times can you run the same Round Table Pizza commercial? It's not going to add up to 67 million, I tell you that.
For the record, when the A's were on Action 36, Cable 6, it felt big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Do you think oil change like sucks because they're just running out new pitchers every time they got to make a change?
It's unbelievable. Like, it's the same. It's always been the same, like 7 or 8 advertisers who are on the A's broadcast. And I'm like, because no one else gives a shit. It's like that Extreme Pizza. You see that one over and over. You're like, what do they have? 2 locations? What did that cost them? Like $100 to air it? No, it's brutal.
One of the credit unions was partnering with them. It was like every time the A's hit a home run or strike someone out, we'll donate like $5,000 or something like that. I'm like, oh well, yeah.
Well, you see it on radio too, because the A's the first one to go to the app.
Yeah, they eventually backtracked and put it on 960 AM, but like nobody listens to that. They went full time to the app, and I believe the White Sox did too.
Well, the Sharks do, and I have not ever listened to it one time.
Especially in a day and age where we consume like podcasts, like that kind of stuff, like so frequently. It's like it's your favorite sports team, and like you don't even consume any of their information, any of their media, nothing. It's crazy.
And yet, all of this could be solved with like a world-class owner like Joe Lacob. So please, for the love of God, Joe, I know he's bid for the A's before, and Fisher has told him the team is not for sale. Make another bid and make all this go away, because someone who just spends on the team, like, there's nothing like it. Like, the Warriors were nothing for 35 years, and that guy comes in and says, I'm willing to spend over the luxury tax and pay the penalty, and now he has the most valuable franchise in the NBA. Like, all it takes is one good owner to fix all these problems. But like we said, there's a ton of problems throughout baseball, throughout especially soccer in America, throughout all these sports, and we're not going to solve any of them here, but we can sure bitch about it. Thanks.
Love it.
Thanks, AJ, for joining. Appreciate it. Joey, thank you for joining as well. We're back after a little bit of a hiatus. We'll be back in a little bit to do an NFL draft preview. We'll do that sometime in late April. And then obviously football season starts back up again in August. So we'll be back then. Thanks, everybody, for listening to another episode of the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast.